Today we are talking about Agile coaching, and we have a wonderful panel who Ram will introduce. So take it away, Ram.
Yeah, hi. So we have, I'm going to be somewhat in the background. For some reason, I was not able to connect to the laptop, and I'm, as Magda puts it, I'm bouncing around on my phone. So we have Anita, who's an associate trainer in India, and Dharmesh, who's in a program with her at this point in time, who has a lot of experience on Agile coaching, and Meenakshi, who's joined us from US, who's also very familiar with Agile. One of the reasons we started, or we chose this particular topic as perhaps the first colloquium, first webinar for this year, was that there was a lot of interest from people on who were in technology, and even those who were not in technology, was working with technology companies to understand more about what Agile coaching is. How is it similar to coaching? Because Agile uses the same terminology for people who work in Agile teams as coaches. What way is it the same? In what way is it different? For me, the primary interest on this Agile coaching process has been because of my interest in systemic coaching, which we have been talking about for quite some time. Agile is extremely systemic. It's about teams. It's not just about individuals. It's about individuals as well as teams, how teams work together. In fact, one of the major words that is used in Agile is about Scrum, which is a rugby team when they come together at the beginning of a session. And there are many other things in Agile which resonate with process improvement in terms of how we can do better as teams. Almost like what are the pathways to create high performance teams? And it has several aspects of, for example, Kaizen, which is continuous improvement, Kanban, just in time, and so on. It may not be very obvious at first glance, but if you look at the principles of Agile, where you don't really wait till the end to submit everything in a perfect shape or as near perfect as you can, but as you go along, keep submitting just in time, as it were, and keep making improvements so that there are bits and pieces which are coming in all the time and which allow the users to cope with continuing change, which is remarkable. And that's how coaching should be. It's not about just a one-off kind of thing that is being done. It should be systemic, it should be continuous, and each point taking off from what we left off to cope with what changes that we have had and move forward. So with this introduction, I'll stop here. So Dharmesh, if you would like to start with your presentation, and then I would leave between you and Meenakshi to have a dialogue. I'll come in as and when maybe I have some questions to ask or some clarifications to make in terms of actual experiences. Thanks. Over to you, Dharmesh.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Ram. So let me just share the presentation, and this will be more a dialogue. So keep putting in your questions, what you want to hear, what you have in mind. Ram has already given the introduction to Agile. So I'll just start with, in very brief, what the Scrum is about for the people who don't know, and try to just link it in terms of from the coaching perspective where all the coaching plays. So the first thing is in terms of the product backlog.
Sorry, Dharmesh, to interrupt. Could you resize your screen or go to presentation mode so it's easier to read? It's a detailed slide. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Magda. So as Ram mentioned, the key thing about Agile is iterative development, that in the short time of 1 to 4 weeks, something gets developed, and at the same time, it's shown to the customer, and there is a continuous feedback from the customer. And the whole focus is on the customer. So the how the backlog is built is more in terms of from the customer perspective. And as we in the coaching, we first ask the customer in terms of what is the goal, and we have the contract. Similarly, in Agile, there is a particular format of the user stories, and an acceptance criteria is what is the behavior that you expect. and how would you know that you have reached your goal? So similar type of thing is in terms of gathering the requirements, and that is how the coaching really helps to coach the product owner, who is the customer representative. uh, and then there is a lot of focus in terms of the teamwork, and as a team to be self-managing and self-organizing, to be able to plan, execute, and deliver on their own. And to help the team to do that, there is a role called Scrum Master. Uh, so this is the key role. Someone mentioned, I think Param mentioned that he's already playing a Scrum Master / Agile coach role in the uh, chat window. So this is a extremely key role in Agile, which helps the team to self-organize and to deliver. And the whole thing is about the team, and the team continually retrospects in terms of how they can keep on improving every iteration by iteration or every sprint by sprint. So this is in very brief about the Agile. If you have questions, then we can answer. Otherwise, we can focus a lot more in terms of the scope of coaching, right from the team perspective to the whole organizational perspective, and from the individual to the systemic, not just the team, but as organizational as a whole.
Dharmesh, just FYI, I did add an article to chat with some context around Agile methodology. So this can be fairly detailed. So for anyone who doesn't know much about this, please read the article versus asking the questions here so we can focus on the coaching aspect. Thank you.
Thanks, Magda. Anita, you want to add anything?
Yes, I just quickly added, just like Magda, something on the chat, which just says that what we talk about Agile, Scrum, etc., for non-software environments, it's really about saying we can use this for anything in the world, for any business, for where you got multiple teams coming together, multiple people in teams coming together, and they are empowered. You don't really need the boss to always define what is to be done. So it's empowered teams. As Dharmesh said, it's a lot of customer involvement all the time, rather than let's create a product and then give it to a customer. And what if the customer doesn't like it, right? So then you go through the whole iteration again, and it's very expensive, time consuming. So in this case with Agile, what happens, as it pretty much says, it's agility. So very quickly you develop things as an empowered team, quickly get customer feedback right from the beginning all the way till the end. So you know what the customer really wants, and you incorporate it through customer feedback all through the time. Just one thing over here is that while there is a process which is defined, more of it is also the behavioral aspect that is required so that the process is optimal and what comes out is truly in the most efficient manner. And we'll use examples as we go along, but just thought I'll put that in there.
Sure. Thanks, Anita. Okay, so let's move forward. So the key thing that Agile involves is more than a process. It's more about a culture. I think the more misconception in the industry is that Agile is a process. And that's where a lot of project managers, program managers jump into Agile, and then they find themselves lost and at the same time not able to give the results. So the thing is, if you focus on culture as an Agile, and we'll look at how the culture of an organization should evolve. So this is a typical hierarchical organization that you would see. And you can see that this comes mainly from the manufacturing industry, where you have the proper hierarchy as well as the specialized roles and the specialized processes defined, and the handovers from one to another is defined. So what happens is that from top to bottom, it is more in terms of orders, like an army, in terms of what are the things that needs to be done, and the people at the bottom just needs to give the status. So this is a traditional organization. So the first thing that is required for an organization to move is towards the collaboration, and in terms of the collaboration, how to work cross-functionally, as together as a team towards the common goal. Although this may sound obvious, but you will see that very few of the organizations actually are able to do this. And this is where the main role of a agile coach, specifically the one who is working more at a organizational level, comes into picture. Is first thing, how do you move the organization towards collaboration, lesser hierarchy, more in terms of the equanimity. And once you can get to this, and then the next stage is in terms of a servant leader, where the people who are doing the work are at the top, and the role of the managers and the executive is to keep on enabling them and keep on serving them so that they perform more and more. They take more ownership, and if they are taking more and more ownership, they will deliver the better products. So, and that is where the terminology that is used is in terms of a servant leader. Yeah. Questions, comments? Ram, you want to add anything here? You're on mute.
To unmute. Magda, you muted me, or I'm not quite sure what happened.
Before, you didn't have background noise. Yes, you are now unmuted.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to add, one is get Meenakshi's inputs, her experience in terms of doing Agile. And one of the things I just want to point out is when you talk about the sprints, which are, like you said, 4 weeks or so, these are pretty short-term interventions, or in a certain frequency of short-term, which then involve action and learning from action. And once again, there's a new sprint at the next stage or whatever. So one can really configure a coaching journey in a very, very similar way. That's one of the parallels that I see, and being in alignment with a systemic approach as well. So Meenakshi, your inputs, please.
Certainly. Thank you. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Thank you. Good morning, good evening, everyone. And thank you, Dharmesh, for leading us into this discussion. My experience, my background has been primarily in, it's been a combination of IT and IT services, health IT, and also English language teaching to adults. So it's been a mixed bag. And where I see Agile coming in, first of all, Agile, as has been pointed out, is more or less like a lifestyle. It's not a process. And it can be, like Anita pointed out, it can be applied to any industry, any organization or team, and even in our everyday lives. The key concepts in my experience in Agile are one is continuous learning, the next is continuous improvement, and essentially one leading the other. So you have continuous improvement by way of continuous learning. And one of the key concepts in Agile is inspect and adapt. So before I get into that, let's just step back. So some of the things that were talked about in terms of sprints and things like that, essentially, you are you're looking at the big picture, but then you also sort of what the big picture is, and the team knows what the big picture is, but then there is a conscious decision made by the team, which is self-organized, to say, okay, this piece we think is the one that we need to work on first. So basically your sprints are time boxed, time boxes in which you do the work that the team agrees on. And hence the visual that's in front of us right now, you see that it's the image in the center, in the middle, that says collaboration. So there are certain values within Agile, and one of it is collaboration. There's courage and there's respect, which means that each of us within the Scrum team understands what our strengths are, and we as a team we play to our strengths. And the role of the Scrum Master is more or less that of a coach and a servant leader. And the primary responsibility is removing impediments for the different team members so that each team member can perform to their fullest potential. And the focus of Agile is, in my mind, humility, because humility is the cornerstone of continuous learning. This is my personal opinion. So if each of us that does our work is open to saying, you know what, this can be done better, and we put it out there, each of us puts out our work there to get feedback from within the team. And in order for us to um, get the most out of this agile framework, we each of us needs to not only respect the other team members, but we also need to have trust in them. And so these are the basics in my mind of agile. And where I've seen it work is um, I've always been a part of global teams, and so which means a lot of us are virtual team members. This framework really works well with global teams, with teams from different sociocultural backgrounds, because the basis of this is, like I pointed out, trust, respect, courage, humility. And I think these values are so fundamentally human that it doesn't matter which um, what you're trying to develop. Is it if it's a software or if it's a service, which part of the world you're in. I think these are very universal. I'm going to pause here. Thank you.
Thanks, Meenakshi. Yeah. Okay. So let's move forward. Uh, there were some questions in terms of should an agile coach be an SME. So the key to that is an SME about an agile culture and how to imbibe. So the key thing is that the coach has to be imbibed the agile culture in order to mentor and coach the teams. So that's the key. Along with that, there are some process, there are some technicalities, but that's not the key requirement, and that is something that can be learned on the way. But the key is about the imbibing the agile principles, and we'll cover it in a moment. Yeah. Okay. Um, so as Meenakshi was talking about in terms of the culture within the team and the values within the team, these are the ones that are required to make the team self-organizing and self-managing. And this is where the Scrum Master plays a key role in making the team self-organizing and self-managing. So on the surface, you may think that, okay, courage, focus, commitment, respect, openness are the obvious ones. What I would ask the people in the audience is that how much of respect do you see for each other team members at different levels in your organization? Similarly, you can think and look at it in terms of how much openness do you see within your teams and at the different levels in the organization. And you would see that nowadays many organizations are they say they are open, but when it comes to conflict, where people are very reluctant to bring up the conflicts, people are very reluctant to oppose someone's point of view. And this is where just having this culture of openness and respect really helps. And this is something you can directly relate it with the 5 dysfunctions of a team, where the trust is the basic of it. And once you have the trust and openness, then you need to make sure that the people are able to bring up the conflicts, and the Scrum Master helps the team to resolve the conflict. So that's the key thing of a Scrum Master as a coach. And the role of the product owner is more from the customer perspective and how much he is able to get the business agility in today's very volatile world. You see that the technology is changing very fast, and same thing in terms of the customer requirements. So currently I'm working with the bank, so you can um, see that how the bank transactions used to happen 5 years back, 10 years back, and now if you look at the digital payments, how that is taking over, how the amount of digital payments have surpassed the normal transactions of various parts of the world, specifically in Asia, India, China, and also in the South Africa. So it is changing very rapidly. So as the business is changing, the agility for the organization that is required is how does the organization is able to maneuver themselves fast to the environment changes and to the circumstances that they change. So that's the key role of the product owner and in terms of the organization. Then when we talk about the leader or specifically as a manager, right, we see that in the standard manager role would be one would be in terms of the people development and in terms of the appraisals and in terms of the career path. And the other thing where he would be more focused would be more in terms of project management or managing the day-to-day delivery. In Agile, the key difference of the manager is that manager is more of a coach and a mentor to the team members, and the project management, project execution, all that responsibility is taken over by the team members and with the help of a scrum master. So in terms of the day-to-day project management, the manager need not be involved, and in a very good agile organization you will see that manager is hardly involved in the day-to-day execution. So that's how the role of a manager changes with a people leader or a manager as a coach. And this is where also the agile coaching is more focused at the leadership level to change their way of working, change their way of thinking, and getting out of the way of the team members, rather than trying to keep on worrying about the status and in terms of whether the things are on track or not. And then the key thing is in terms of organization, how the organization is structured. For those who are more interested in the basic, you can look at the coordinationchaos.com that has a very good video in terms of how the traditional organizations which are structured in a very siloed way, how that reduces the speed of execution. And when you structure the organization more for the faster delivery with the lesser hierarchy and with the cross-functional team. So again, these are a big words. I will go into the details if people have the questions and who wants to know about it. Otherwise, it can take a long time. But the key thing is to have the cross-functional team that can deliver value directly to the customer. And the idea is how do you move from a siloed organization to an organization which is less hierarchical, which is more cross-functional. And because of that, it gets more agility in terms of adapting to the changing circumstances. So I'll pause here. Meenakshi, you want to add anything here? Ram?
Yeah, before Meenakshi, I just have something to say. One is I would like the panelists to focus on not the technology part of Agile, not the technical aspects of what Agile is. And if there is an interest, we can have separate sessions which go into the details of this. Today, it's an overview as to, because there's a tremendous amount of confusion amongst people as to is Agile really coaching? And that's coming up in the chat as well. And I think there's a very good comment saying that Agile coach itself is a misnomer and it's more in a consulting or a mentoring mode. It's quite possible, especially there is a comment from somebody else saying the Agile coach should be a subject matter expert. If that is a criterion for being an Agile coach, then it's more a mentor's role that the coach performs, maybe in a non-interfering way, perhaps, maybe in a more guiding way, but still a mentor, but not necessarily a coach who might be, I mean, like for example, more and more, even in companies in regular coaching, companies are looking for people who are familiar with the domain. Often I'm very clearly asked, the person familiar with technology, have those people worked in technology and so on. And we can keep telling people, the corporate clients, that coaching is non-domain specific, anybody can do any job, but the client doesn't buy it most of the time because they would like people to talk that language. Whereas in Agile, it's far more than that. It's not merely talking the language of technology, but probably with a lot more expertise on what the technology is about. So I would like you guys to, some of you who are familiar with this, because I'm not, as to what these are. And so there's a greater amount of agreement between the audience and the panelists in terms of, is that what is correct?
So perhaps I can add in one thing for this is that the way I see it, much like quite a few, Kabir, Kiran, etc., have been talking about in the chat, is also that there is the subject matter expertise of an agile, experienced person, if I may. Let me not call in the coach first right now there in that term. Agile owner, if you may, is handling the process so that, you know, they define whether it's Scrum, Kanban, whatever that is, which is specific to the process. Now, when you add in the term coach along with the agile coach, what does that mean to me is that agile coaches, not just, they don't focus just on the process, but also on the behavioral aspect of how Meenakshi and Dharmesh talked about, which is listed over here. So if you see, how do you now get teams to become more collaborative, to show more respect, to be more risk-taking, open to say, I failed. I've not been able to deliver to what I committed. I think it's going to take time for me, and that's going to slow down the delivery of my team. So somebody else in the same team will say, okay, I finished my work. I think I can pick up your work, Anita, right? So what then happens is there is true collaboration happening because everybody is focused on getting to that outcome. But for that to happen, the agile coach has to coach me so that I can be authentic. I have to show courage, which I have not yet done in the organization, because so far my boss used to reprimand me to say, oh, but you said you will deliver it by this time, you know, you've not been able to deliver, right? So I now, in the coaching, when it's agile, I, as a software engineer, whatever person that I'm working in, as a team member, have to demonstrate a different kind of behavior, which is courage, collaboration, etc. I can't do it on my own because I have not been conditioned that way. Steps in the agile coach, which is what we all are. We are coaches. So we should be able to help the team member to now change behavior and be courageous and to show more collaboration. That's where, to me, our kind of coaching comes in handy to this agile process expert. And that's why, if say Dharmesh and Meenakshi have been agile scrum masters, etc., earlier, now with ICF coaching and other kind of coaching skills, the way we understand coaching, they become even better agile coaches than others who are process implementation agile people. I'll rest my case. I don't know if that helps Meenakshi, Dharmesh, you experts.
Go ahead, Meenakshi.
Yeah, Anita, just to follow up on that, I think based on what you said, and I mean, in principle, I completely agree with what you're saying. But specifically, Meenakshi and Dharmesh, and maybe somebody else in the audience as well, sort of point out in what way an agile coach in an organization can benefit from understanding more about the coaching framework, training themselves as coaches, as there are many people here in this audience. And in the same way, a coach who has no familiarity with the agile process in that sense, not in technology, is there a simpler way for them to get involved in that process? Is there at all a possibility, assuming that they have absolutely no subject matter expertise on this case, but could they still perform some form of useful role in the agile process? I just would like your answers as well as from the audience as well.
Sure. Meenakshi, you want to go first?
Sure. Thank you. I agree with a lot of what Anita said. And to Ram's question, I think that okay, particularly in the US, and especially in the region where I live close to the DC area. Um, in the past 2 years, I've seen Agile sort of become like almost like a fad. So everybody's talking about Agile, and there's Agile HR, there's Agile marketing. I mean, they just prefix Agile to everything. But and what I've been personally struggling with, and which is part of the reason I decided to take a sabbatical, because I said, you know what, the organizations that I want to be a part of in order to support this as a mission, I don't think the organizations are there. So what I mean by that is, Agile has come about as a sort of an umbrella term, and it's being, to be honest, sort of being pandered about without people really understanding what it takes to be agile. So there's a difference between being agile and doing agile. The mistake that most organizations make, in my personal opinion, is that they are all focused on doing agile. So people think that just by having these, the Scrum ceremonies, such as a daily stand-up or a retrospective or a sprint backlog meeting or whatever, they think they're all agile. And this is the beginning of the end, in my opinion. So the key is, and I want to say one other thing. A lot of organizations seem to focus on agile as a siloed approach. So they think that agile is something that the IT team does, and or if it's a product company, then they think it's a product development team. They are agile, and the rest of the organization is waterfall, which used to be the traditional method of developing software. So what happens is, um, everybody, if an organization, when an organization decides to become agile, they just put everyone through training, right? And then who gets the training? It's only the IT team. The reason for why agile doesn't, it strays so much from what Sutherland and others had intended it to be, is that the business, the finance and HR, and how the executive leadership team thinks about the business, that remains command and control. And just the IT team or the software development or the product development team suddenly is thinking in terms of sprints and fail forward, fail fast, and all of that. And so the rest of the organization, it fails to keep up with the team that's actually making their organization's bread and butter. So a lot of the times there's friction in how the product and software development teams function and how the rest of the organization functions. So where coaches can come in handy now, whether you call them agile coaches or coaches, I personally am sort of indifferent to that. I think that an agile coach is a professional coach who also understands the agile way of working. Now, Scrum and Kanban and XP, and these are all just different um, tools, if you will, in the agile toolbox. Now, agile is a way of working, which is embodied in the slide that's up there right now. Like, what are the values that matter to that way of working? What is expected of the people that are in that agile framework? Now, it is not to be siloed to just your role. Am I a software developer? Then I'm agile. If I'm the CFO, I'm not agile. It doesn't work that way. Because if so, for example, that when I talked about agile HR, I think there's value in saying agile HR, but then I don't think it should be used as as a fad. So why do HR teams need to understand about agile? Because they are the ones that are going to handle recruitment. They are the ones that are going to handle employee rewards and recognition, and exit interviews when it's time for employees to leave the company. So they need to understand what Agile means, what is the agile way of working? How are these teams structured? What do they need to have in place? Similarly, the finance team needs to understand, because I've seen a lot of organizations where getting your headcount approved from a financial standpoint is still done in the old-fashioned command and control way, but the way your work is being done is agile. So there needs to be. So I'm saying two things. One is, um, to Aram's question, I think any coach with an understanding of the agile way of working can be and will be a successful coach in that environment. And secondly, there needs to be complete congruence in the understanding of the agile way of working between the software development or the product development or service delivery organization and the rest of the business. So agility needs to be embraced by the entire organization as a whole, not just by certain teams. Thank you.
Meenakshi, I have a question for the three of you here, and maybe somebody from the audience as well. From what I had read earlier, and I may not be 100% correct, the whole process of Agile started as an alternative to what was called the waterfall method, or whatever it was, a traditional way of how you develop software, and which was considered to be inadequate, ineffective, and therefore this was started. And then there's enough evidence to show that Agile is now used not only in the technology space where it originated from, but in many other places it could be applied. So like you're talking about HR and finance and so on and so forth, or a manufacturing industry and everything else. So which means it's not about a subject matter expertise of that technology space, but if you're really talking about other functions like finance or HR and something else, it may not even be about subject matter expertise. So there are, I see some comments here, AJ and others, who very firmly believe that unless you are an SME, you don't have a business to be an Agile coach. And there are others who are taking a different point of view. So the simple question I have is, how did this shift happen, and what was the need from a traditional method that it moved into this? Had it anything to do with the technology per se, or it had to do with the fact that everybody was working towards perfection, and therefore splitting it into small goals and making it faster, learn from actions, and coping with change? The primary interest as a coach I have is, if this is far better way, as I see it, something that copes with today's VUCA world in terms of change and be better, it doesn't matter whether you're a subject matter expertise person or not. It should be possible for someone to be able to guide people in that. So where does the truth lie in this?
Sorry, Dharmesh, go ahead, please.
Okay. So now there are many questions. I'll first just go with respect to the waterfall versus agile. So if you look at it in terms of from the waterfall, there was a spiral, and spiral it had industry had already come to an incremental. And as the world became more VUCA, it was important to get the customer feedback immediately. And I can give an example of Kodak. Kodak being uh, company which was used to developing films and the camera, and they are no more. And when you look at the process at that point in time, it was very systematic in terms of you have to buy a certain number of roles, and you cannot look at the outcome until the roles are developed, and there is no chance of correcting your mistake in terms of if the photograph was not taken properly. And you just supplement that with the current process of taking a photograph. It's just 5 minutes. If you don't like it, you change it immediately, you take another photograph. So that's how the technology has evolved. And because the technology has evolved, the customers are expecting immediate feedback, immediate changes, and they are very quality sensitive. They don't tolerate any mistakes. So this is how I look at it in terms of the agile, and also in terms of speed of execution. Now, if I go back to the previous question in terms of, does an agile coach Can a normal coach without any technology background can be an agile coach? And as there are quite a few discussions in terms of the agile 4 values and the 12 principles, I've just put it up here in terms of the slides. So as you can look at these 4 values and 12 principles, you will see that it's just a behavior. So any person who is exhibiting this behavior can be a good coach. Um, and when you compare it with respect to ICF, in the ICF, we say that, okay, what should we ask the client in terms of what should be your goal? And depending on, let's say he wants to be good at managing politics, right? Then as a coach, we may choose to help him in terms of managing the politics. The difference is in terms of the agile coach, it is in terms of the goal. This is the behavior that is expected, and as a coach you need to uh, able to either mentor or coach the person in terms of this behavior. I'm seeing many people who are not from technology background getting in as a scrum master into the organization. Even one of the scrum master in our organization has a psychology background and does not have any technical background. And it works better because as a psychology background, the person can understand the teammates behavior. There was some discussion in the chat window, much better, and can facilitate the team towards a collaboration. So that's one part of a scrum master as a coach. And when you look at it in terms of the leadership coach, at the leadership level, what matters more is more than agile. It's more about how you are able to influence the leadership, how you are able to convince the leadership to come out of the command and control mode and get into the collaborative and then into the servant leadership mode. So as far as that behavior is concerned, that has nothing to do with agile. And it's a fad, it's a buzzword, you put it under the agile umbrella, doesn't matter. But if you are coaching at leadership, what I would say is that anyway you would want the leadership to be at that level for the organization to be high performing. The leader has to be serving, leader has to be available, leader has to be open communication, leader should encourage people taking risk, leader should encourage innovation in the organization. Now whether you put it under agile umbrella or not does not matter, but as a coach this is something that you do. So does that answer the question before I go to the second part of the ones where how does the ICF help into if you have a technology background in the agile coaching? But this is more in
Yeah,
terms of.
I think what you've already said, Dharmesh, I think it certainly helps. And these manifestos as well as the principles, and you're absolutely right. They are domain non-specific, as it were. And that's the reason why many people say that, yeah, Agile can be used anywhere. And so probably in a technology company, it is in the self-interest of individuals to say, I have to be a technologist to be an Agile coach. That's fine. And similarly, in other industry, they might do that. And what seems to me, I think Meenakshi talked about the fad. There's a lot here which is similar to lean thinking, for example, in terms of principles. There's a lot here which is, it corresponds to the Six Sigma process. And these also have become now completely cults in some sense. So every second guy is a black belt, whatever that damn thing means, because they don't even understand that it's a journey that matters, not the destination. And that's the core of, it's almost like I equate that with the Gita, the message. The outcome is not important, but the journey is important, or the message of Buddha. In that sense, it's a highly spiritual kind of a concept. Similarly, in Agile also, there are many, many concepts which are very similar to Kanban, Kaizen, lean thinking, and all that kind of stuff. So now, my question is, it's not so much about we can talk about the competencies, but far more importantly, if by integrating all this, and if coaching were looked at a larger process with an objective, and Anita and I were in a different discussion earlier today, and we were talking about this. It's just about moving from point A to point B. The point A being your current reality and point B being the destination that you wish to reach, the desired outcome. And the pathway is full of obstacles, perhaps internal and external. And if it is internal, especially, the individual customer is unable to figure out what it is if they are unconscious. And the coach helps the person to traverse from A to B and moving forward, exploring, creating awareness, etc. So the question primarily for me at this point in time with you guys, if we want to equate agile process with coaching, without using the word coach in agile, there is clearly an outcome that we want, a desired outcome of a client, customer, is a point that you start from, and there is communication and everything. But where are these factors of awareness creation or the need for awareness creation in the agile process, and how are they handled?
Okay, sure. So if I can take is it okay, Meenakshi?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Um, so the way I look at it, point A and point B is defined in Agile as compared to the normal coaching. And the way it starts with, so I normally give a metaphor in terms of being a football coach, where the coach is actually, when the game is being played, is directing the team members to go here, there, it's continually shouting um, and telling them how to go about it. So starting from that, moving on to more of a tennis coach or a badminton coach, where the coach is observing the game, and in between the game, after a few moments, few sets, coaches and tells that where the person is lagging, or where he's not seeing the opponent's game plan, and so on, to moving into more of a cricket coach, where it is more an just an observer, and then the person works with the actual player to create more of an awareness shortcomings in terms of, if you just look at it, okay, you got out on this type of a ball, and what were you thinking, how you could have done better, and so on. So that is how, when you move to that level of maturity of agile, that is when the coaching and the ICF competencies plays more role. And the other thing of creating awareness, the way I look at it, the most important is at the leadership level, to create the awareness that the command and control is not going to work. I think that's the key thing. And if, as an agile coach, a person is able to create that awareness at the leadership level, the transformations would be much, much more effective. Yeah.
I agree. There was another thing that Ram had. So Ram, to your earlier question, I was just thinking about it and taking in all the conversation. I think that there is definitely an opportunity for coaching for professional business coaches to adopt the agile way of working and the principles and the ceremonies as well. So breaking down your coaching goals into sprints and then keeping time boxed, and then having coming to an agreement with the person you're coaching as to so agreeing on the goals and the duration for which you're going to work on these goals. I see a parallel in that where coaching can um, adopt the agile way of working, or you can either do it scrum or kanban depending on what is it that you're working on. So in the technology world, typically when there is new service or new product development, typically it is done using the scrum framework. And if it is maintenance and bug fixes and things like that, that's typically done in the kanban style, because you're looking at what is your work in process limit. So I see parallels, and depending on the scenarios in which coaching is done, I see a parallel and the opportunity to use the agile way of working. That was one. Second thing, to something that Dharmesh just talked about, and I saw a question somewhere here. I think that was from Devi Prasad about how design thinking and agile work together. And this was also on something that Ram, you had just talked about, how you see a lot of the lean processes and lean thinking come through in agile. I absolutely agree with that. In my experience, what I've seen is that design thinking, agile, and lean, it's like a Venn diagram, and each of these three circles. And there's a lot of commonalities, and so agile, be it Scrum, Kanban, whatever. That's when. So to me, design thinking helps you figure out the why you want to do something. So you are doing user-centric, empathetic research and understanding the true customer needs. So that's where you use your design thinking principles and your approach. And that sort of funnels into the what you've got to do. And once you have the what is when your agile way of working, Scrum, Kanban, be it whatever it may be, that comes in because you've already figured out the why. So in a product development organization, be it technology or service oriented, even hotels, the hospitality industry can use agile, right? So once you've figured out what is it that you want to do, that whole the arriving to the what requires you to understand everything from a customer standpoint, because at the end of the day we are about what we are doing is delivering value to our customers. Now each of us, it's a tremendously interconnected world. Each of us is the other's customer in one way or another. So understanding what your customer needs, you apply design thinking principles, and then you use the agile way of working to deliver on it. And where lean comes in is that you're doing this quickly. So the going back to the difference between that Dharmesh was talking about earlier, between waterfall and agile. In waterfall, you gave your requirements, the project ran for, let's say, 9 months. Requirements were collected at month 1, and the final product is given back to the customer in the 9th month. And things change. So it may not be what the customer wants now or needs now, but then wanted it 8 months ago. So lean allows you to develop your thinking and your culture, where you're saying, you know what, I want you're doing smaller increments. So value is being delivered continuously and in increments. And so you really are able to manage your risk of developing something which ends up being a white elephant or a lemon. So that's how I see these things: design thinking, agile, and lean sort of coming together.
Meenakshi, so if I may comment, today only I came across an article which says design thinking, lean startup, agile are all the same thing. And I completely agree. It is just that old wine in new bottle. You label it
Yes.
differently, you are able to market it. Actually, agile, you will see it's exactly lean when you look at it in terms of the management principles. So, and just one thing I would want to add is in terms of agile is more at a systemic level to create an awareness. In today's hierarchical organization, you will see that the people don't care too much about the team or how the team is delivering. But agile as a framework gives you that you create an awareness how the team is working every 2 weeks and keep on improving in terms of how the team is working. And what I have found for Agile to be successful is having that type of a retrospective at the leadership level, at a multiple levels of leadership, is more than required, because you will see that at the leadership level, people are less open to talking about the real problems, although people talk about it in the background. But to create that type of awareness at a leadership level as a systemic coach is the key. And whether you do it under the leadership coaching or the systemic coaching or agile coaching doesn't matter.
There are a couple of comments out there which I found quite interesting. I think both two of them are from Balaji, between the agile with a capital A and agile with a small a. I think that often confuses people. One is the process as opposed to what it was before waterfall. and the basic agility, resilience, etc., that are needed. Totally correct. And I also agree with this point. Slightly different from what you said. Agile and Lean are not exactly the same. Agile and Kanban are not exactly the same, but there are elements of it which come in with each of them, and there is a larger framework. Actually, a very interesting point is David Prasad had earlier said about design thinking, and Meenakshi, you picked it up. We are actually, at least I have in my mind to plan the next session in the month of February. The advanced webinar will be on design thinking, and I would like you guys to be there as well. Let's see how we constitute a panel. And you're absolutely right. And I think someone had put in a comment here, if the design thinking is about the why, and what do you call it? Agile is about the how, is the Lean about the what, possibly. Each one looks at the thing, how do they come together? They need not necessarily be the same. For instance, when you talk about prototyping in design thinking, the process of prototyping could be using Agile, for example. And the whole approach, the design thinking can be based on waste reduction and effective utilization of resources, which is what Lean thinking is all about. So there are multiple ways of doing that. So the more interesting question for me is, if we as coaches are looking at a much larger systemic perspective, that even if you are asked to work on a specific issue, a specific problem in an organization, which may be more individual, can we take a broader view and make it more systemic? Can we look at the larger aspects of how we can improve effective utilization of resources, for example, or the harmony between the various elements and so on and so forth, which may or may not necessarily be part of the ICF competencies. But if you see in the last change in 2019, the ICF competencies itself, there's a very, very significant movement away from what it was before. And some of that movement is reflected in a lot more of the word, the systemic stakeholders and so on and so forth in the ICF competencies. And far greater emphasis on self-awareness that is being created. And also, if you go through the details of what is called the CC2, which is the agreement. Earlier, the CC2 covered only what happened in a session, but now it's about the whole journey, how individual sprints, as it were, make a total journey in, for example, in Agile. So there are certainly moments in the coaching space which probably has been influenced by people who've been experiencing the Agile process and other processes. They're coming together. So the reason why we are having these different discussions, for purists, are we talking about coaching competencies? Maybe from a purist perspective, no. But when you go out on the field and we are working with a corporation in a systemic sense to add value, many of these things will have to be brought together. So we would like to sort of coaches to have a broader knowledge than purely the competencies. And that kind of a very, very limited knowledge is not really going to benefit us or the world in general. We need to have a much larger framework, and to be able to work with multiple, whether it's Agile, whether it is design, whether it is Lean thinking, whether it's Six Sigma, whatever it may be, how do we integrate all this? And with the behavioral aspects in terms of sciences of neurosciences and psychology. So this is the effort that we are trying to make here to be able to present this to all of you, and we're really looking forward to more of you joining in these conversations. Next week we would have, next month we would have a conversation on design thinking. And next week, actually, we have a colloquium with Dr. Suman Nair on Enneagram, completely different from what we've been talking about. For those of you who would not know what Enneagram is, it's a kind of a personality test, more psychic, perhaps, more spiritual. It has its origins in Greek mythology, perhaps. Suman is an expert on that. I'm not sure whether she is here today, but yeah, she will be presenting it next week. So I would welcome all of you to join us in that session. So let's close. Thank you all very, very much, Dharmesh, Meenakshi, and Anita. Magda, would you like to give the password out for those who are looking for CCUs, or has it been already done?
It has not been done because someone forgot, and that someone was me. So yeah, starting off the new year on a good foot, huh? Okay, I will set this up in about 10 minutes. So please don't claim right now. Please claim in about 10 minutes, and we'll make the password Magda had a brain fart.
Doesn't matter, but instead of using such word.
Oh, come on, a little humor. Okay, I will make it something to do with me and my forgetfulness.
Let me make myself useful. Use the word waterfall as the password. WATERFALL.
Fine. That's much better.
Yeah.
but I did forget.
Sounds better than brain fart. Anyway, so it's okay.
Depends who you ask. If you ask my 5-year-old neighbor, I think she will disagree with you.
Okay. So would my 6-year-old granddaughter, but anyhow.
Okay, so waterfall. Give me 10 minutes, but thank you, everyone.
Yeah, waterfall is the password. You can use that to claim your CCEUs. Next week, we have on Enneagram. Next month, we will have the advanced webinar on design thinking. And any of the others, I know both Meenakshi and Dharmesh have familiarity with design thinking, but there are some others who might have done actual work with design thinking in a larger perspective. If you have, please let me know. We would like to have you on the panel as well.
Yes,
thanks
please,
a lot.
you can actually just
Thanks.
email me as well, and I can connect you to Ram. So Magda at Kocharya, I'll put it in the chat. Magda at kocharya.com. Please email me if you want to be on the next panel or on future panels. And you can also go to kocharya.com/events to see all our upcoming sessions. And as for the password, someone's asking, it doesn't matter if it's uppercase or lowercase. Once you go into claim the CCEU, it'll be super clear. So password is waterfall, and we'll see you guys here next week.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye. Take care.